Welcome to At the Coolidge. Now we're calling this Behind the Screen, and this is our 50th episode. And for this 50th episode, we're talking about consuming media with the crew, because we haven't had the crew in front of the camera. So for this episode, we're talking to, did I just hit my mic?
Yeah.
It's a good thing to do for the 50th episode. Dustin Hunt and Mike Collari, usually
behind the camera.
Usually behind the camera.
Usually, yep.
And we spoke recently with Andrew Silver, who talked about new methods of distribution. So we thought we'd also talk about the consumption for this 50th show with the new logo coming up behind the screen that you saw at the beginning, hopefully. So, you guys watch, I guess we should call them moving images, right?
Yes.
Not just movies, because it's all kinds of things, in ways that are not in the movie theater, which is where we're coming from, the Coolidge Corner Theater in Brookline, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
But there are other ways to see movies.
Definitely.
What's one of the primary ones, Dustin, starting with you, that you use to watch moving images?
I recently got an iPhone, and that's kind of been the way that I've watched movies. I don't know, it's hard for me to like go to a Blockbuster and rent things. So I go to iTunes, and you can rent legitimately or buy legitimately movies off of there, and you can just, the only bad part about that is like transferring it to your phone, and then you can just transfer it to your phone. That takes like 20 minutes to a half hour because it's transferring of files, but then you can just AVI right out to your television and you're watching. I mean, it's low resolution because it's meant for like an iPod screen, so like transferring for as far as resolution is concerned has changed, but you're still getting the same sort of experience, but it's playing out of an iPhone rather than like a DVD player.
And you don't have a problem sitting here like this?
Well, sometimes I do, but that I'll be like laying in bed and I'll have the iPhone like inches away from my face, and that's how I kind of like, you know, kind of the small screen. You can't really watch a movie.
And you could turn it to make it go widescreen.
Yeah, you can turn it, and so like that. But that's why usually when I watch a movie, I usually do it on my television from the iPod, just out of it.
Okay, Mike, do you do anything like that?
I don't do anything from my cell phone.
Do you go to the movies?
I'm pretty selective now because movie theater, they cost a lot of money. $10 for some movies. You got to be really picky and choosy about what you decide to spend $10 on. There's been plenty of times where I've gone to a movie, spent $10, and coming out, why did I just spend $10? I should.
Well, don't you think people should do a little? I mean, this is
research.
One thing. Yeah, a little research. Right.
You know, find out what the critics are saying. Read the reviews.
Right. Don't see what the biggest ad is and who the biggest star is, because then you're usually gonna get fooled.
Right. That's.
I mean, if you like talking dogs, that's
disaster.
fine. Maybe anything with Jack Black, whatever. But to some extent, you should do a little research, right?
You should.
Yeah.
You should.
So then, what do you watch when you're watching it in bed? Do you watch a blockbuster, or do you watch a great independent film like from the Coolidge Corner Theater? Can you even get those? Or are the only product that you actually can consume in these ways the most commercial movies?
Mostly, by the legal standards, are usually commercial movies.
Right.
On demand, Comcast On Demand, they have a section devoted to the IFC in theaters, but usually they're $1 more than the typical new movies because they're usually showing movies that are in the theaters currently. So you got to spend an extra $1 or $2, but they have some really nifty independent movies on there.
Do you guys do the research to go in and find movies that actually might, I mean, I hate to say are better, but are more artful, speak more about humanity than, you know, I mean, I love Pirates of the Caribbean or Iron Man's a great movie, but a lot of these are more about the technology of creating the movie than discovering something about yourself, and not to be all highfalutin about it, but what this show hopefully is trying to do is create a culture of people who go to see those kinds of films too. Is there any way that the way that you consume films, that you can find any of those films? For instance, you know, a Hulu or a what were you saying earlier? You watch or watchmovies.net. What are they showing?
Most of the stuff that you're seeing on there is probably out of like the big theaters. It's big commercial stuff. I mean, iTunes, I've been impressed with recently. They've shown, like, they have really good documentaries you can rent. Men on Wire was on there. I mean, Men on Wire did really well, so it doesn't really surprise me. But seeing it on there was surprising by itself, because mostly what you see on there is, like you said, Eagle Eye and all the latest stuff that's out there. Us being in the situation that we're in, like, I don't know, working at a Coolidge Corner Theater and going to an art school near an independent theater, it's easier for us, I feel like, to know about the more artful movies that are around. But as the average individual living in Boston, I feel like it's really difficult, you know, to be informed. And I think that has something to do with the movie industry in itself. You know what I mean? Like, everyone consumes their movies on average just by what they see on television. You know what I mean?
And your point of, if you're not in a big metropolitan area, especially with art schools, and both of you are from the New England Institute of Art. We should say that this show is produced in part with the New England Institute of Art. Mm-hmm. If you're not in a place like that, it really is hard to find these movies. And if you can't get it in alternative ways, how can that culture be kept vibrant at all? Is one of the big problems.
Definitely.
Yeah. That's one of the big problems for these independent movie makers, you know, is finding distribution and getting their movies out there. For example, there was a movie that actually screened here at the Coolidge 2 years ago, give or take, 2.5 years ago. It was called Tarnations. And you actually hosted the screening, I believe.
With
Jonathan Couette.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to find that movie anywhere, but I told my friend about it, and he recently has stumbled upon it on Netflix. And I feel like Netflix is doing a really good job at getting, you know, the sort of nooks and crannies of, you know, independent movies and great documentaries like that.
And Netflix at this point is a pretty standard delivery service. But what about, okay, let's move to another, what about online? You know, there are places that either stream or download films. We talked indiefilms.com. We talked to the woman who runs that site. Are there sites that you ever go on your computer, which essentially is your television screen, to find things to stream to yourselves, or you don't do that?
I do stream, but it goes back to the idea that you only things that you get are Transformers and that type of stuff. You know what I mean? Because that's what's in demand. You know what I mean? When you make a streaming website, you're making it so that it survives and that people go to it.
Blockbuster films on there.
And unless you target an independent audience, which is hard to do as far as.
But you know that there are all kinds of sites for independent film online. And that's one of the primary places that you go to find those films.
Yeah,
but you don't
go. It goes back to we don't go because we're being marketed towards